a warm round of applause once again for Dr. McClutchan, who has performed variations of Lift Every Voice and Sing. Good morning again, and welcome to the Veterans Recognition Assembly. I am Dr. Leroy Hamilton, and I am pleased to preside over our activity today where we're recognizing our veterans. At this particular time, I would like to follow the program as listed and ask Attorney Lisa Lang to begin with the summons of assembly.
We stand here today in a country so many have fought and died for, to celebrate and to honor those who have served. The sacrifice and valor of our veterans who fought for our peace, our freedoms, and our safety is something most of us cannot fully fathom. We may know service to others as we enter to learn and to go out to serve, but most of us truly don't know what it takes, what it feels like to put our lives in danger to serve someone you will never meet and cannot imagine. Today, we honor our veterans who, like alumna Anna Mack Clarke, whom this assembly is named, defied the odds to keep us safe. Clarke, a Lawrenceburg native from just down 127, became one of the first black women in Kentucky to enlist during the Second World War when she signed up for the All-Volunteer Women's Army Auxiliary Corps, WAC, in 1942. Clarke was the first African-American woman assigned to command an all-white unit before her life and service ended in April 1944 at age 24 due to complications from surgery. We honor Clarke and all of our veterans today as we collectively express our gratitude for your service. The assembly is now called to order.
At this time, we will have the Mighty Martin Thoroughbreds who will perform the Star Spangled Banner under the leadership of Mr. Alvin Level. Thereafter, we will have a welcome address from Ms. Desiree Fields, Ms. Kentucky State University, and Mr. Christian White, Mr. Kentucky State University. Marching Mighty Thoroughbreds. As always, a wonderful job by our mighty marching thoroughbreds. At this time, I would like to acknowledge many of our student organizations here at Kentucky State University. I'd like to begin by acknowledging Envy Us Dance Troupe. Good. Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. Campus Activity Board. Student Government Association. NAACP. Collegiate 100. Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. KSU Girls Rock. Sisters Improving Statistics. Mentally You. Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Golden Girls. Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. KSU Royal Court. Project X. Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. KSU Cheerleaders. Junior Class SGA E-Board. KSU Basketball Team. KSU Baseball Team. Active Your Activists. Nation of Islam Student Association. Iota Phi Theta Fraternity Incorporated. Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. Mighty Spartan Thoroughbreds. Sophomore Class SGA E-Board. And our Freshman Class SGA E-Board. At this time, I would like to welcome Ms. Sarah Evans, who will bring recognition of armed services, followed by a musical selection entitled America the Beautiful. Thank you.
On Veterans Day, we remember again our men and women who served. We honor them now for what they did then, the liberties they preserved.
Let's never forget their sacrifice, the hard, heavy work they have done. They did what was asked, crucial needs they fulfilled, with a phone, pencil, or gun. We're happy and proud to honor them. They gave so much more than they got. Our heroes, our veterans, kept freedom safe. All of us owe them a lot.
Good morning. I am Christian Xavier White, and I am honored to serve as your 28th Mr. Kentucky State University.
And I am Desiree Fields, and I am privileged to serve as your 92nd Miss Kentucky State University.
Greetings to the Board of Regents, administration, faculty, staff, and the student body.
If there are any members of the Board of Regents present, please stand. If there are any elected officials present, please stand. And if there are any members of the clergy present, please stand.
Veterans Day honors all of those who have served in our country in war or peace.
At Kentucky State University, we want to invite you to honor the proud and the brave. Let us walk toward tomorrow still honoring them. By living in freedom they protected. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. and Ms. NSU. At this particular time, we're going to offer welcome Ms. Kylie Wainwright to the lectern, Miss Freshman Class 2021, who will perform a musical selection entitled America the Beautiful. Ms. Wainwright.
Greetings. First and foremost, let's continue this day by recognizing all those among us who have been a part of the United States military, including our veterans, active duty service members, guardsmen, and reservists. Your service and sacrifice have kept our country safe and free. Sacrifice, whether physical or emotional, has been great. It takes bravery to serve, it takes bravery to lead, and it takes bravery to perform thankless tasks. I would like to personally thank my family and friends who have served and currently serve. I am proud to serve as your SGA Secretary with Specialist Corey Jones Jr., our SGA First Vice President, who serves our country proudly. To all veterans today, among our Kentucky State University family, please stand to be recognized if you are able. As you remain standing, the ushers will present you with a token of appreciation from President Clara Ross Stamps. Immediately after today's ceremony, please join us for refreshments. Thank you.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesty above the fruited plain. America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for heroes proved with liberating strife, a thoroughfare and freedom beat across the wilderness. America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. From sea to shining sea.
Let's get another warm round of applause for Ms. Wainwright. At this time, I would like to invite Dr. Pernella Deans, Vice President for Student Engagement and Campus Life, to the lectern, who will provide us with the introduction of speaker, followed by Dr. Deans will be our 2021 Veterans Assembly address by Lieutenant Colonel LaShawn Waller. Dr. Deans.
Good morning. Our distinguished speaker, LaShawn Waller, has an expansive career of service in a variety of leadership and staff positions at the operational and strategic levels. Since June 1st, 2020, she has held the rank of Lieutenant Colonel and serves as the Operations Officer for the Army National Guard G9, Installations and Environment Directorate. Her initial assignment was the Assistant S4 for the 63rd Theater Aviation Brigade. Waller has an extensive list of additional assignments, promotions, and acclamations. These include service as a U.S. Army White House Social Aide from 2015 to 2017, and serving in 2 combat tours. Waller's military education includes the Quartermaster's Officer's Basic and Advanced courses, Human Resources Management Qualification course, Engineering Qualification course, Planning, Programming, Budgeting, and Executive System course, Command and General Staff Officers course, Reserve Component National Security course, and Defense Strategy course. Waller's awards and declarations, which are also expansive, include the Bronze Star Medal, Defense Meritorious Service Medal, Army Meritorious Service Medal with 2 oak leaf clusters, Army Commendation Medal with 3 oak leaf clusters, Army Achievement Medal, Army Reserve Component Achievement Medal with an oak leaf cluster, Armed Forces Reserve Medal with M device, and the Army Staff Identification Badge. Waller is a distinguished alumna of Kentucky State University class of 2005. She holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in biology. She was commissioned as a Quartermaster Officer in May 2005 with the University of Kentucky ROTC program, with an assignment to the Kentucky Army National Guard. She also holds a Master of Arts in Special Education from Kentucky State University and a Master of Science in Environmental Management from Webster University. She is currently pursuing a Doctorate of Education from Peabody College at Vanderbilt University in Leadership and Learning in Organizations. She is a member of the Northern Virginia Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I present to you Colonel LaShawna Waller.
Thank you. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, the Allies of Germany put an end to World War I. That conflict, referred to at times as the war to end all wars, prompted leaders to designate November 11th as the day to honor veterans of World War I. Years later, it became the day to honor all veterans. Good morning to Acting President Stamps, Board of Regents, KSU faculty and staff, fellow thoroughbreds, and veterans alike, as well as guests. Thank you for having me share with you all today as you celebrate and recognize the selfless service that veterans have made for this great nation. This is both an honor and a privilege, and I am humbled to be asked to celebrate this Veterans Day with my alma mater as our keynote speaker. Today, we honor and celebrate our servicemen and women of the armed forces who have served proudly and distinctively in every major conflict our nation has faced. Veterans Day is bigger than one person. My journey to this point is because of the sacrifices of those who served before me. All veterans make a sacrifice to serve their country, physically, mentally, emotionally, and through separation from loved ones. And it is because of their service that I am able to stand before you all today. But not just because of those veterans, but also thanks to my family, mentors, and soldiers who I've served alongside. KSU played a huge part in how I began my military career. I am proud to say that my journey into the armed forces profession started right here more than 16 years ago. I pulled up to the campus of Kentucky State University with my parents in August of 2000. It was a last-minute decision that I was grateful that my mom exposed me to. If I am being perfectly honest, KSU was not on my radar during the college application process. It was not until they visited Cincinnati a few blocks from my house that I heard of the university. So 2 weeks before fall registration, my mom knew I did not want to stay local and attend the University of Cincinnati, but she heard that KSU was doing a recruiting event down the street and she made me go. I was sold the minute I walked into the door. To make things even better, during the first day of freshman orientation, my dad and I were sitting there and we recognized a familiar face from our days of living in Tennessee. We looked and there was a middle school church friend that I did not even think I would have seen when my family moved from Tennessee. She was helping with the orientation. In that moment, I felt a sense of comfort. That same night, after my parents abandoned me, I met lifelong friends that I still chat with daily. The first of many lessons that I've learned during my time at KSU. Being a military brat, the world believes that all children who are raised in a military family will grow up and join the service. That belief rang true with me. My mom said I told her at the age of 3 I was going into the Army. You see, my dad was in the Army for most of my childhood. I was fascinated with the uniforms and the cadences that I would see and hear chanted whenever I would visit him at work. At that age, I really did not know what being in the military actually meant. I grew up calling his colleagues by their military rank, not Mr. or Mrs., but also saying yes ma'am and no ma'am. Although I was exposed to the military at an early age, I did not immediately join ROTC when I enrolled in college. I enjoyed everything on campus to include cheerleading, softball, even though I was no good, and gymkhana. ROT was the farthest thing from my mind. I had enough to keep me busy rather than looking into how I would join the Army, even though it was something I wanted to do most of my life. Back then, and still how it is today, KSU was a satellite school for ROTC through UK, so the presence on KSU's campus was not prevalent. So there was very little opportunities for me to explore the career field that I cherished growing up. But as fate would have it, I began to experience financial hardships between my freshman and sophomore year at KSU. Basically, I ran out of financial aid. My parents were not well off, but they made just enough that I was not eligible for grants. I worked every summer since high school, but still did not have the money to cover the deficit of tuition and fees. My parents had paid a portion of my fees and tuition my freshman year, so there was nothing left. I refused to go back home. A lot of the scholarships I had received for 1 year without renewals. Even during freshman year, I was turning in my work study checks to the bursar's office. You know those checks that are part of your financial aid package that you end up going shopping with? Those are for your tuition and fees. I had basically hit a major roadblock and had to make some tough decisions. The summer before sophomore year, I decided to make an appointment at UK to inquire about ROTC. Once I made the decision to enroll, I realized I was going to need a car, which meant I was going to have to work. I had been working part-time since I was 14, but my freshman year, I only worked a summer job. The following school year, I got a job at Kroger and AutoZone to cover expenses. This all meant I was no longer going to be able to partake in the luxuries afforded on campus as a student who did not have to be gainfully employed. I would also have to carefully plan my course schedule so that I could fulfill ROTC requirements as well as my major course requirements. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I vaguely remember my initial courses in ROTC. I do, however, remember a few weeks into ROTC, and I was in ASB in my introductory ROTC courses, and 2 planes crashed into the World Trade Center. I observed on the screen in our classroom and knew it was horrific, but really did not know the ramifications of what had occurred. I had been to New York, but had never been to New York City, and did not really know what went on at the World Trade Center at the age of 19. Information began pouring in from various media outlets. Simultaneously, our professors of military science at UK had put out that we were not to wear our uniforms on campus or at lab at UK, but rather attend in civilian attire. I had no idea how the events of 9/11 would impact my life. A couple of years later, one of my closest friends, also a KSU alum, graduated and enlisted in the Army and was deployed to Iraq shortly after. ROTC, as I recall, was the first time I had ever experienced being the only one in the room. I understand the reservations within our culture about the armed services. Until I stepped on the campuses of UK, I never witnessed such a lack of diversity. You see, I grew up in a military family, going to school at military installations with people from all over. My elementary school years were in Italy, so I was exposed to diverse cultures throughout my childhood. I went to the Performing Arts School in Cincinnati, which was diverse in more than just ethnicity. So my entire life consisted of me being exposed to different cultures and ethnicities. However, at KSU, I was in a league of my own. There were not many students at KSU who enrolled in ROTC. I can recall a small amount in the introductory courses that were offered on this campus and assumed those students enrolled for an elective because they were not in my laboratory classes that were required of cadets on the campus of UK. There was one prior service cadet that was senior to me that I barely saw on KSU's campus. Over the years, there was another classmate that I was closer to in age with whom was also prior service. However, you did not see many students on KSU's campus walking around in military uniform. If you did, they were not in ROTC. After your freshman year in ROTC, you are required to take 2 courses in addition to lab on UK, at least when I was a student. I think I struggled in ROTC because I did not see anyone from KSU or anyone that looked like me. I did not default on my grades in the program, but I just was not as motivated or comfortable. I've never been, nor will ever be, a quitter, but I was bothered by the fact that I was indeed the only one. That realization was something that I struggled with during my college years. Most of the cadets went to UK, and if they didn't, they were students at Georgetown, Midway, and Center, where those students were not solo, as I was. They were in groups and had others to support their efforts through the program. I remember trying to do physical training on KSU's campus with some of the ROTC instructors that were assigned to KSU. I will not dare say I was not afforded the opportunity to enjoy campus life at KSU, because I did. But when my friends were enjoying college life, I had competing priorities that caused me to miss out on some of those treasured memories. I had to make sacrifices at this early stage in my military career. I had to ensure my KSU schedule allotted appropriate time for me to meet UK requirements. I had to plan out my schedule to account for travel time between Frankfurt and Lexington. I had to rearrange my KSU course schedule and delay taking courses or 2 to ensure ROTC courses were included. And on top of that, I had to give up weekends for field training exercises. However, I probably would have missed out on weekend fun anyway, because as my friends would tell you, I probably had to work. The biggest void I felt during my ROTC experience was that I did not have anyone at KSU to share it with. The students at UK were friendly for the most part, at least those that entered ROTC at the same time I did. Despite the amount of time I spent at UK, I never felt completely connected to the classmates. Funny thing is, today we all try to keep in contact as best we can. It was not until a few days prior to graduating that I realized I did not appreciate and take advantage of that experience. While a student at KSU and as a cadet, I kept those lives separate. I often felt alone in that aspect. I had my friends, but they did not really know what I was feeling in the program. They supported me as best they could. I still remember that feeling of isolation I experienced during my years in ROTC, but looking back on it, I think I made it that way. There were plenty of opportunities for me to invest in my potential. For instance, meeting the Army's physical requirements. Throughout college, I was on the thin side and easily met the weight requirements, but physical fitness was not my forte. I played some sports in the early years of my childhood, but I can recall my dad saying I had a heart with no athletic ability. Now y'all can laugh at that. Now you don't have to be an athlete to run 2 miles under a certain time limit for your age, or do your maximum amount of push-ups and sit-ups in 2 minutes for your age group, but you did have to work at it. Which brings me back to running on campus and going to the track. UK had pity on me and didn't require me to travel to UK's campus every morning to do physical fitness with the class, but I did have to travel on mornings of our physical fitness tests. I can only recall passing maybe 3 physical fitness tests in my 4-year ROTC career. Something about running just did not sit well with me. Again, there goes my motivation. I allowed the fact that I felt alone prevent me from being successful in ROTC, but I never gave up. I knew what failing looked like, and by my last year in ROTC and graduating from KSU, reality set in, and I did not allow disparities in the program prevent me from commissioning and graduating. Swimming was also a sticking point for me in ROTC. We had to complete a combat survival swim test as well. I could not swim to save my life. My dad used to take me out to the middle of the ocean, and I would scream and cry the whole time. I was placed in lessons in elementary school and still could not swim worth a lick. The ROTC program put me and another KSU alumni in swim lessons. I took lessons for about a year. You see, the combat water survival swim test consisted of treading water for 5 minutes, swimming with your rifle, submerging underwater, and removing your load-bearing vest prior to coming to surface. And the last portion, being pushed off the diving board, blindfolded, and having to swim to the side, all while keeping your weapon above water and fully dressed in uniform and boots. I can recall heading to the Leader Development Assessment course or advanced camp that summer prior to commissioning. UK told me that they would not make me do the swim test there and I could waive a portion. Well, little did they know, while in Washington, they made everyone at least attempt. It was the majority of us black cadets that could not pass. The portion I did pass because I was so afraid of drowning was the slide for life. The slide for life consisted of us climbing up a 4-story ladder. We had to hold our weight on this bar similar to zip lining, and we couldn't let go until we saw someone hold up a SpongeBob sign. Only then would you let go and fall into a lake and come to shore. I was terrified, and for the life of me, I would not let go too early. Upper body strength has never been a weakness. And so I had achieved this obstacle after going through an obstacle course that had definitely taken me to burnout: wall climbs, rope climbs, and parallel bars. That training consisted of 30 days in the state of Washington with minimal contact with family. It wasn't as strenuous as basic training is for enlisted personnel, but it was the officer version of basic training. I had to do land navigation on stress fractures on both my feet. Again, I was not an athlete. In the first 2 days of training, fractured both my feet during a confidence course and various ruck marches. For the last week of the training, I had a boot on my foot. I remember that I failed land navigation. I knew how to plot, and I probably was decent at finding points from a map. However, I was spooked by wildlife. I wouldn't dare go into the woods to look for a point if I could see it from the tree line. Couldn't see it from the tree line. Don't let it be night land nav. I was not going into anybody's woods. Going to school in Kentucky was the first time I had seen a wild turkey or a steer. I remember going through remedial land navigation in Kentucky, and it was me and the steer. My professor was trying to tell me that it wouldn't harm me, but I didn't trust him. In my head, the point was going to stay where it was until that steer moved out the way. Anyway, I did find all my points during day and night land nav on fractured feet. They made me remove the boot in order to complete the course, and I returned to college my last year with a boot and crutches, still needing to pass the combat water survival test. ROTC put me back in swim lessons. My KSU friends helped me with swimming in Exum. 2 days before graduation, I was standing on the diving board on UK's campus by myself with a skull cap, masking my eyes, gripping my dummy rifle. My ROTC professors, 2 of them, were standing below trying to encourage me. However, I was really annoyed. One was talking about the Army values and personal courage. I had a few choice words that I wanted to shout out to him, but I digress. I mean, this should have been easier because I didn't have anyone pushing me. I had to do it on my own. I think I probably stood there for like 30 minutes. At this point, those in the aquatic center were just watching me. Eventually, the lifeguard yelled out to me, "Do you think you'd do it if I got in the water?" I shook my head yes. He got in the water, and I still stood there for another 5 to 10 minutes. I jumped. That moment was standing in between me commissioning as a second lieutenant in the Army or having to pay back the scholarship money ROTC paid. It was going to ruin graduation if I had not done it. On May 15, 2005, after degrees were conferred, there was a special moment for me at KSU's graduation. I was called up to the front of the stage at the convention center. My professor of military science from UK ROTC was there. My other ROTC instructors were there. Everyone graduating from KSU and guests were silent. In that moment, I raised my right hand and commissioned as an officer. My dad, who had left the Army in 1994 as a staff sergeant, rendered me my first salute. As monumental as that moment was, I have no photos or video coverage of that event. I blame technology at the time and my brother, who acted as cameraman. I think we still had Nokias back then. I tell you this story of my time at KSU as a cadet and the obstacles that may seem minor to some, how it got me where I am today. I could have easily left KSU after my freshman year and went home to the University of Cincinnati. I did not want that for myself, and obviously, God had other plans. I could have quit ROTC when I felt some of the senior students were giving me a hard time, whether it was because of my race or just some sort of hazing ritual. I don't know. Whatever it was discouraged me and made it harder for me to be motivated and take full advantage of those opportunities. You might say, didn't you take advantage? Yes, I did. But what I mean is the relationship building and the affordances that the ROTC program offered, whether here or on UK's campus. I did not quit. I worked hard. I had friends that, although they may not have understood what I was doing, worked with me on swimming. Some would sometimes go to the gym and run with me, and those pockets of individuals that tested out ROTC were also supportive. Most of all, I had my family. After commissioning, I made a last-minute decision to go into the National Guard. I pursued my first master's degree with the first cohort of Kentucky State University's special education program. Upon graduating KSU, I initially enrolled in Xavier of Cincinnati for graduate school and secondary education, hence why I chose the National Guard to have time to pursue my graduate school. Little did I know that the events of 9/11 were shifting my initial plans. I disenrolled from Xavier in 2006 in preparation to deploy later that year in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. I again found myself being alone as the only female commissioned officer in my unit. My first deployment as a newly minted butter bar, second lieutenant, came with a lot of challenges. If you are familiar with the military, officers and enlisted do not mix. So I had no one to share my frustrations with. When I got the opportunity to call back home, my dad was my sounding board. ROTC stresses to cadets that they will be leaders when they arrive at their units, but really did not explain what that meant. I often wondered if people challenged me because I was young, female, or African American. At the same time, I was learning in real time. Yes, I was in charge, but what did that really mean? I had approximately 22 soldiers and 24 civilian contractors that I was responsible for, and most were either my age or older. Leading by position of authority or power is not a favorable course of action, and I did not learn that until halfway through my 15-month deployment. It requires you to build trust, be relatable, and be an expert in your craft. While I succeeded on this deployment, I learned those key lessons through trial and error. I would not say I had failures, but I had several less than critical mishaps. It is what you do with those failures or missteps that make you successful. There are tons of unnamed African American military personnel that have paved the way for me to get to where I am. I would not have the many opportunities had they not done it first. Yet it is still surprising that after 300 plus years, I still find myself occupying spaces where I'm the only one in the room. I persevere and still do my best because someone may be watching to know that they can do the same. Without the military, the affordances I had growing up would not be. I lived in 3 countries throughout my childhood and had a passport prior to grade school. I had experienced various cultures just from the places my father had been stationed. My own military career has given me opportunities that I never even dreamed of. My first training exercise after graduating college was in Korea. with the South Korean Army. While deploying to Kuwait for the first time was not glamorous, it was still someplace I never would have gone without the Army. Approximately 5 years later, I deployed again as a captain and a company commander. This time, I was responsible for 180 soldiers, dispersed in 2 locations in Iraq and 2 locations in Kuwait. My unit was responsible for what we call a forward arming refuel points in Iraq. My soldiers refueled Black Hawks and other rotary wing aircraft, helicopters, for U.S. forces and our allies. We maintained supply distribution as well as managing other transportation requirements throughout. We were also amongst the last soldiers to leave Iraq in December of 2011. In addition to my 2 combat tours, the military has exposed me to so much more than just selfless service. In 2015, I was given the opportunity to represent the Army by singing the national anthem for the Women's History Month during the Washington Nationals baseball game. I was beyond terrified. This experience was so unexpected, and the likelihood of this occurring was slim had I not been on the military path. From 2015 to 2017, I had the honor and privilege of serving as a White House social aide during the Obama administration. This was beyond my wildest dreams and never knew it was possible. The other military officers I had interacted with, while most were junior to me, had graduated from military academies or other Ivy League institutions. During this time, I had the opportunity to attend various state dinners, announce the late Kobe Bryant to the President of the United States, awkwardly standing a step away from Oprah Winfrey as she and the CEO of Kaiser Permanente asked me a simple question, tongue-tied when the Miss Debbie Allen asked if I could move a chair so her sister could sit as I turned and saw Felicia Rashad. Standing in a room doing my military duties when Miss LaTanya Richardson, wife of Samuel L. Jackson, says, "I remember you. You're the one with the big theater voice." All I could do was smile and greet them both. While working the president's photo line a couple weeks prior, they were in the room, and he had to be loud enough announcing names to the president and first lady so they could hear as they engaged their guests. Samuel L. Jackson complimented me on my voice. None of these people know me, obviously, but just to be in the space was numbing. I've had the privilege of escorting dignitaries such as the Prime Minister of India, Prime Minister Modi, during his visit to the White House. I was also a fly on the wall for several other events, such as Barack Obama's birthday party, where cameras and phones were not allowed, or hear people like Tom Hanks and Will Ferrell and how fascinated they are about what me and my colleagues do. My last hurrah in the position was during the 46th presidential inauguration, and regardless of political views, was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. It was quite possibly the most exhausting day of my life. Serving my country has not always been glamorous. Despite how exciting being a social aide was, it had its pros and cons as well. As I sit with over 16 years of service, I have never set out with an initial goal other than securing an active duty retirement. When I told my mom I wanted to be in the Army after observing my dad all those years, I had no idea when that would actually happen, or the sacrifices and challenges I would experience. Circumstances resulted in me taking the path I did, and experiences have kept me in uniform. Being in the military is not difficult. It can be mentally exhausting, and in the words of the Army warrior ethos, requires you to be mentally and physically tough. People have their own perceptions of what or why people join the military. Regardless of why an individual joins, the hope is that the positives outweigh the negatives, and the relationships you build along the way increase the willingness to selflessly serve. Any job that you have on the civilian side is available in the armed forces. While I'm partial to the Army, and the other services are just the same. The advantage of the ROTC program is that you commission rather than enlist and have leadership experience within the first 2 years of serving, where your civilian counterparts are waiting 10 years to manage personnel. While your skill set may remain the same throughout your military career, Your jobs, assignments change every 2 to 3 years. They have to in order for you to obtain the broad depth of knowledge and experience and be prepared for the challenges that lie ahead. In my experience, I've managed logistical support of aviation equipment throughout Southwest Asia and access of $150 million of aviation repair parts. I have forecasted and defended budgetary requirements and reviewed design criteria for National Guard facilities in support of the 50 states, 3 territories, and District of Columbia for inclusion into the presidential budget. I have walked the halls of Capitol Hill and the White House, and I've definitely been in rooms where there are none that look like me. Female officers of my grade and rank are far and few in between in the armed forces, let alone in the Kentucky Army National Guard. I have felt the burden of feeling that I have to prove myself and prove that I belong. Today I stand as the battalion commander of one of the largest battalions within the Kentucky National Guard, responsible for over 700 soldiers. I am beyond grateful that the Commonwealth has saw fit to provide me with this distinguished opportunity, something that our ancestors and grandparents who served could only dream of seeing. Fellow alum Anna Matt Clarke, the first African-American female to command as the first lieutenant of an all-white regiment, set the path that I have been able to walk. When the late Kathy Williams, who had to disguise herself as a male in order to prove that she belonged and serve as a Buffalo soldier in 1886, today we have women breaking barriers and entering ranks that were once closed. In 2020, women made up 19% regular Army, Army National Guard, and Army Reserves. During World War I, only 21,000 women served in the Army Nurses Corps. That increased to 150,000 during World War II in the Women's Army Corps. We have only increased by 30,000 since then. It is 2021, and the armed forces still has a long way to go for diversity, equity, and inclusion. But they are not alone in this fight. The armed forces have come a long way from when our grandparents and parents have been in the armed forces. Back then, an African American of my rank, lieutenant colonel, let alone female, were few and far between. I did not get here on my own, and as the late Secretary of State and Chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, Colin Powell, states, there are no secrets to success. It is the result of preparation, hard work, and learning from failure. I have been blessed throughout my military career, and whether you decide to join the armed forces or not, I encourage you to always put your best foot forward, give your all, and never let anyone determine what you can and cannot do. Overcome self-doubt. You never know who might be watching, and at the end of the day, you might surprise yourself. Nothing worth having is easy, and I have always been an advocate for breaking barriers or doing more than what others expect of me. Philippians 2:3 says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. I serve because I enjoy it. I serve because as a young girl, I was fascinated by what I thought it meant. I serve because it challenges me mentally and physically. Serving causes me to extend myself in more than what I ever knew that I could. I serve because I want others to know that they can also. From the start of high school, I began volunteering because I wanted to give back. I've always had the desire to help others in ways that I could. In closing, I encourage you to commemorate this Veterans Day and each and every day, serving others and being a part of something that is greater than self. I ask that you always remember those veterans that may not be able to advocate for themselves and consider the sacrifices they made that many of us oftentimes take for granted. Also, take the time to thank veterans for their service. Veterans know what it truly means to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Our veterans need your support daily. Continue to work collaboratively to find solutions rather than engage naysayers. Remember and embrace the saying, enter to learn, go out to serve. Look for a way that you can serve others, serve our institution and your community. I'm so glad I went to KSU. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Lieutenant Colonel Waller, please come back. We want to thank you for your service, not only to your country, but to your beloved HBCU, Kentucky State University. And I want you to accept this token of appreciation on behalf of President Stamp.
And on behalf of the Alpha Pi chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, we would like to present you with a few more gifts.
At this time, we will present the Anna Mac Clarke Veterans Awards for 2021. Attorney Lisa Lang graduated cum laude with a BA in English from Eastern Illinois University in 1991. After completing her undergraduate degree, Lisa enlisted in the United States Army as a legal specialist. During her 6 years on active duty while deployed, Attorney Lang managed the legal activities of 1,100 soldiers in 10 units. Today, Lang serves as a general counsel for Kentucky State University, a role she has held for 4 years. She began her career as a lawyer, working as an associate attorney specializing in insurance defense for a law firm in Louisville, Kentucky. Lang left that firm in 2008 to work for the Commonwealth of Kentucky. She first worked in the Office of the Attorney General as an Assistant Attorney General, and then for the Kentucky Department of Education in various in-house counsel roles until taking her current position here at Kentucky State University. I present Attorney Lisa Lang. Mr. Corey Jones, Jr. Corey Jones, Jr. is a 22-year-old business administration major born and raised in the city of Champions, East St. Louis, Illinois. Corey has proudly served in the United States Army Reserves as an automated logistics specialist since the age of 17. He plans to become an Illinois state trooper and help serve crimes throughout his home state, especially in the city of East St. Louis, Illinois, where he lost his brother and cousin to gun violence. Becoming a state trooper is just one of the steps that Corey plans to take towards his ultimate goal of becoming a Secret Service agent for the President of the United States. Corey is a member of the Beta Mu chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, where he served as chapter vice president and was secretary for the 2020-21 Student Government Association. In addition, Corey served as one of the 4 board of directors that rechartered the Collegiate 100 chapter in the spring of 2021. He is currently first executive vice president for our Student Government Association. Corey is passionate about helping others grow and develop and mentoring our youth. Growing up, he was a junior deacon in his church, a part of the praise and worship team, and served the youth choir director. Please welcome Mr. Corey Jones, Jr.
At this time, we're going to ask Ms. Colleen Wainwright to lead us in the alma mater. Ms. Wainwright.